In this last chapter, chapter 10 of the book, the author is going to be going through, in only a very general way, some of the ways in which we can connect to the different spheros according to the times of the day. And the first step is the night. And he says that it is through the night that one connects to the sphere of Malchus. And we were elaborating yesterday in quite some detail about the quality of day versus the quality of night, some of the forces that are involved at night, how the quality of the night affects our sleep, what happens during sleep to the different levels of the soul, the relationship of the different levels of the soul in the times of night to the different types of dreams, the experience of the soul during dreams with interaction of different forces, negative or positive, and how that connects into sleep being associated on the one hand with prophecy in the form of dreams, but also associated with death in terms of the bodily experience during sleep and the result of impurity. So we actually spoke about quite a lot yesterday. But outside of the text is background information. But now, with that in mind, let's try and move forward a bit in the text. So not too far into chapter 10, we'll find here the paragraph starting, V'hischil me'alayla. He's referring to the teaching in the Zohar, which he said, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai teaches us how to connect to the spheros during different parts of the day. V'hischil Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the Zohar, he started his discussion of the day, of course, with night, because the Jewish day starts by night. Et shchivas ha'odam al mitoso, the time when a person lies on his bed. V'shlita hi laila. What governs the world at that time is night. Midas Malchus, which is corresponding to the Midah, the sphere of Malchus. V'hoylech lishoin, this person goes to sleep. Hashena hu ke'ein misa. Sleep itself is like a form of death, like we discussed. That the Gemara says that sleep is a 60th of death. The experience of sleep is like a 60th of death. Why? Because the soul departs from the body during sleep. It is spiritually rejuvenated throughout the period of night when a person is asleep, and then returns to the body when the person wakes up. But while the soul has departed from the body becomes vacant of that spiritual component, and therefore undergoes a certain type of a death, a partial death. And the result is impurity. Vilona de Moisa Shalta, at that time, not the tree of life, but the tree of death has sway. So ma yaseh, what shall he do to overcome all of that, right? Which are the things that we were talking about yesterday. Ma yaseh, what shall he do to connect to the spheros at that time? Yisaken v'yakdim liskashir b'soid hakedusha. The first thing is, he should, from the outset, from the very beginning, try and correct and perfect himself, and to tie himself into the side of holiness. Dainu, sod midas malchus b'bchinas kedushasa. Connect to the mystery of the holy side of malchus. V'lezeh al mitoso v'yikabel ol malchut shemayim shalema b'kavanas alev. And he does this by, when going to bed, he accepts upon himself the yoke of heaven completely and full-heartedly. So he's talking about saying the Shema, right? It's connected to the idea of saying the bedtime Shema. Reciting the Shema before going to bed accepts upon himself, or it was an expression of his accepting upon himself, Ol Malchus Shemaim, the yoke of the kingship of heaven. So that when he's going to sleep, going into the period which corresponds to Malchus, which is a period of darkness, which is a period of exile, this is a time when he should specifically be saying the Shema. The Shema is accepting upon himself the commitment to believe in God, to accept God as our king, and to fulfill the mitzvahs of God. When a person does this, he's connecting himself to the holy side of Malchus. Why the holy side of Malchus? Because we mentioned that Malchus has a dark side, as it were, meaning it's Malchus is prone to being, I suppose, circumvented or encircled, actually, by these negative forces. So when a person says the Shema, the bedtime Shema, the Gemara calls that a double-edged sword, a cherev pifios biyodam, a double-edged sword which is in their hands. So when a person says the Shema at night, he's like wielding a spiritual sword. He becomes a type of spiritual ninja, which he uses the powerful blade of the Shema, that double-edged sword, to cut away the chitzonim from the Malchus, and this way connect to Malchus in a positive way. So when he's going into the state of sleep through the gate of Malchus, he's going to be doing so unobstructedly, so that his soul will enter into the spiritual realm through the sphere of Malchus in a way which won't be tainted by the chitzonim. And therefore it's very important to say the Shema at that time, to cut away any of these extraneous negative forces that would seek to cleave to his soul as it's elevated through Malchus into the higher realms. He should accept upon himself wholeheartedly the yoke of heaven by saying the Shema. Now, when he has said the Shema, which over time is developed not only into the actual paragraphs of the Shema itself, but all types of protective verses that are said beforehand and afterwards, with supplications and prayers and requests. You can see the set of the bedtime Shema there. You'll see that all of these protective verses are also intended to encapsulate his soul in a protective sheath, so that he's able to enter into that spiritual realm and have protection from those negative forces. Number one, from the chitzonim and the klipos, which are like the orla surrounding the Malchus, but also to protect the soul as it's elevated through the realm of the Spheros from being subjected to any dinim, right? Any of these negative forces, any of these dinim that are coming down from the Gvuros, specifically from the sphere of Gvura. So all of these prayers and all of these supplications and all of these verses are creating this protective aura for the soul in order to kind of accompany it on its journey upward and protect it from the influence of any negative forces. The result of that is therefore going to be that, number one, when a person is going through sleep in the first stage of the night, which we said corresponds to the Chamor Noer, that is the braying donkey, that is the reverberating of materialism into the first part of the night, this person is going to be freed from that. Why? Because through saying the Shema, he's actually committed himself to Hashem, committed himself to the mitzvahs. He has separated himself from his mundane, weekday, daily activities and dedicated himself to Hashem. So he's going to be clearing his mind from any of the mundane things and getting his mind into the right mental state for the preparation for sleep, which means the first part of the sleep, which is going to be elevating his soul from the physical but more into the transcendental realm, is going to be a much more smooth and easy process. Rather than rolling around and being perturbed by disturbing thoughts or feelings or emotions or things that are happening in the body as a result of having eaten or exercised or whatever the case may be before he goes to sleep, he is getting, by saying the Shema, into this kind of meditative state. Yes, this type of meditative state, which is going to give him a much smoother disconnect from the physical realm into the spiritual. That's the first part. The second part is, once the night continues and he elevates himself above the mundane material influences of the world, which kind of reverberate into the first part of the night, and now he's into the spiritual realm, but the lower spiritual part, which is inhabited by lower, inferior spiritual beings, as we mentioned, the demons and other types of negative forces and the like. That soul, which has been propelled into the spiritual realm and enveloped through the power of the Shema and all those protective verses as well, will create a protective capsule which will deflect these negative forces from the soul, which means that as it's going through the lower spiritual realm, it's going to be guided and protected and guarded in a way which is going to make that experience of transcending from the physical into the spiritual that much more easy, that much more fluid, which is going to enable the soul to get ultimately to a place which is much higher in a way which is much less obstructed. And then finally, since he's gone to bed by having a full-hearted recital of the Shema and everything that means, that's going to send that soul in a trajectory which is going to bring it to a very high place and make it much more prone to receive from God, who he has dedicated himself to by virtue of having recited that Shema. So it's very important, and everyone needs strengthening with it, including myself, to try and really make a point of, before going to sleep, making that kind of mental and emotional and spiritual commitment to God, to say the Shema and all of the different verses that are there, because it's going to make the sleep experience much greater. Often what happens when a person starts to get in this pattern and this routine of saying the Shema before going to bed, things all of a sudden start to go wrong. He's tormented in sleep. He has wet dreams. These types of things can happen. The person, I don't understand, Rabbi. I thought saying the Shema was supposed to make the experience of sleep much more tranquil, much more spiritually uplifting, and making the soul much more prone to receiving purity and not impurity. So why are all these negative things happening? The answer is because, of course, there's a Yetzer Hara, and when the Yetzer Hara sees a person doing something which has such potential elevation, it works extra hard to pull that soul down and hold it down and hold it back from attaining what it is that the person could attain if he were left unfettered and were able to actually do accomplish what's supposed to be done. So that's the first thing. When the Yetzer Hara sees a person making this progress, it makes special effort to try and prevent the person from moving there. The second thing is, it also starts to create kelim, vessels for purity, which have not fully been constructed. So on the one hand, the person, by saying the bedtime Shema, connecting into the idea of sleep being a spiritual experience, stirs up spirituality, but it's in a way which has not been properly harnessed yet. He hasn't created proper vessels to receive the experience. And the result is that negative forces are going to be attracted to that energy and going to be able to pull him down and wean away from him the energy that he's drawing to himself. Why? Because again, he doesn't have the fortitude, doesn't have the strength, he doesn't have the vessels yet to contain that situation. The best thing that person can do is, therefore, just to keep trying. Even though initially, sometimes it can backlash. A person should, time and time again it happens. Whereas I thought Kriyat Shema was, and then all of a sudden, you have to keep pushing forward. A few days, a week, a few weeks, by a month's time, right? The person starts to have a totally different experience in sleep as a result of connecting the proper way beforehand. People have experience with meditating, can also find that meditating before sleep can bring about a much more tranquil and meaningful sleep experience. But even meditation, a person has to know to come down from the meditation before going to sleep, because sometimes the meditative experience can be so great that it actually ends up disturbing a person's sleep, because the mind is very, very wide, very expansive, and the person's not going to be able to have the proper focus needed in order to elevate, because sometimes that meditative experience can cause a person to go more lateral, and sleepy has to go more vertical. But in any case, it's that type of a thing, right? You can certainly use meditative techniques to get himself in that singular trajectory upward in order to receive this rejuvenation. So this is all this is where it all starts then. Malchus, entering into the spiritual realm through the lowest sphera, which is Malchus, in a positive, pure, and holy way, by saying and accepting upon himself full-heartedly the Shema. Kam b'chatzos laila, then a person gets up at midnight. Right? What's midnight? Midnight is literally the middle of the night. It might be 12 o'clock. It might be 12:05. It might be 12:45. It might be 11:37. The point is, it's midnight. It's midway between night, and that's going to vary from season to season, from place to place. But the point is, a person should be trying to get up as soon as possible around midnight. The Gemara says that David HaMelech never allowed himself to be asleep at the point of midnight. He was always awake somewhat before midnight. Based on the pasuk which says, Chatzos lailo, kamti lo hadois l'chal, mishpatei tzidkecha. At midnight I woke up in order to praise you because of your righteous statutes and the thing and the like. The Gemara asks, how was David HaMelech able to wake up like that every night for midnight? The Gemara says that he had a magical type of a harp which was hanging over his bed, and around midnight a northerly wind would come blowing through the window and caress the strings of this harp, which would then serve as a musical alarm clock in order to wake him up, and in this way he was up. There was probably more to that teaching than just wind and a harp and strings, but in any case, he somehow was able to orchestrate this this scenario, which would enable him to get up. And as soon as he woke up, he did what is going to be outlined here in the formula as well. But kam b'chatzois laila, what this means is that a person should go to sleep early enough so that he'll have enough sleep by midnight. In the old days, that wasn't too much of a problem, because again, since midnight was the middle of the night, and you went to sleep when it started to get dark, you more or less had a significant amount of time between going to sleep and midnight. It's true, in the winter, you'd have longer, and in the summer, you'd have less time, but even the summer, let's say it starts to get dark around 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Midnight is around 12:30, 12:45. You still have 4 hours of sleep before getting up around midnight. Now, you would say, how's 4 hours enough? Yeah, 8 hours. I'm still yawning, right? 4 hours of sleep. How can you manage on 4 hours of sleep? Well, first of all, the Ben Ish Chai, one of the great Sephardi Kabbalists of more recent times in Iraq, writes somewhere that every hour of sleep before midnight is equal to 2 after midnight. So if you're connecting into the proper sleep pattern, you're actually going to get more out of the hours of sleep that you sleep in the earlier part of the night. So most people nowadays, because of electricity, go to sleep very late, usually after midnight, yeah, and then need a full 10 hours to why? First of all, because they're exhausted by the time they go to sleep, the body's worn out. They're also getting to bed at a time when the forces in the world are starting to actually stir towards awaking. So that he's like actually going against the flow. So clearly there's going to be a lot of tension between his sleep pattern and the greater forces in the world which are operative outside of him. Yeah? And then in order to get the proper number of hours of sleep he's going to have to be sleeping into daylight. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. But there are all types of noises. Yeah? You don't even realize it. But this beautiful symphony of music which starts every day around dawn and lasts for about an hour, crescendoing, yeah, in the most beautiful outburst of song, and the birds sing and they chirp, and it's like a beautiful symphony. Yeah, the person is sleeping through all of that, but but all of that stimuli is going into his brain. So it's no wonder, yeah, that he needs twice as much sleep when he goes to sleep after midnight and continues to sleep throughout the morning. Rather, what a person really should be doing is, and this is very difficult in our day of age with electricity and so forth and so on, is to go to sleep very early. When God designed the forces in the world to put the world in a state of dormancy, now that the world is going into hibernation, he should be sleeping at that very time. When the world is quiet, yeah, and getting more and more quiet, when the world is going into a state of dormancy, that's the time when he should also be wrapping up in his cocoon and trying to connect into the quietude, the rest and the relaxation and the rejuvenation that takes place during the night. So by the time midnight comes around, if he has prepared for himself for his sleep properly, 4 hours, yeah, certainly 6 hours, certainly going to be enough for a person to have had a nice restful sleep. And then you
attest to that?
What's that?
Can you attest to that?
Yeah.
I had 4 hours last night. I don't know.
Yeah, but when did you go to bed?
2.
So that's exactly what we're talking about. If you go to sleep at 8, then 4 hours is enough. But if you go to bed at 2, right, it's like swimming upstream.
You really think 4 hours is enough?
Yeah.
You sleep from 8 till midnight?
I don't say I do that regularly, but I can attest to that being the fact from having done it. What's that? Oh, so we'll see. Yeah. Yeah.
I've actually I kind of test that too. Whenever I go on road trips, I'll sleep from 8 to midnight and then get up and be on the road by 2.
Is that what your driver?
Well, no, but when I did month-long road trip.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, is that right? Yeah.
And you're good for like the next.
Oh, I'd be good for like 12 hours. Yeah, 12, 16 hours. I mean, 18 hours on the road is a lot, and 12 is
No,
usually.
but just say 18 hours of cognizance.
Yeah. A little bit of Red Bull, some Adderall, you're good to go.
Yeah. You don't want to risk falling asleep behind the wheel. But, that what he says sounds like a very rigorous, demanding schedule. But think about not being on the road, yeah? But getting, 4 to 6 hours of sleep at night. When you go to sleep at the... Everybody's yawning. It's contagious, right? So, you might have had too much sleep last night. So last night was 4 hours? Yeah?
Or a bit less, actually.
But that's the problem. Like I said, electricity enables us to artificially sustain the activity of the day into the period of the day, which is the night, which God intended for the entire world to be in a state of dormancy, relaxation, for the purpose of rejuvenation. So we artificially pump ourselves through the night using electricity to generate all of that activity. And so at 2 o'clock, right, you're so high strung from being busy all day and being up all night that by the time you go to bed, your body's not really ready to go to bed. You need time to wind down. But as your body is winding down, the world starts to wind up. Yeah, and there are like spiritual forces in the world which are waking the world up. And the world is stirring towards dawn and towards sunrise and towards the new day of activity. And so you're going to sleep into all of that is like literally, like I said, like going against the stream. But if you go to bed early, when the world itself is in the direction of sedation, so you're actually connecting yourself into the tune, into the current, into the flow of the world, so that you get a proper, complete rest. And as the underlying currents of forces in the world start to stir the world towards a state of awakening, the body starts to feel that gradually and wakes up in a very natural type of a way.
Feels good.
And it feels very good, yeah. And you don't need an alarm clock, yeah? Your body's just ready to wake up, and you're like, when you hear those birds, yeah, they're not disturbing your sleep. When you're asleep, you don't realize you're hearing them, but they're disturbing your sleep because you went to sleep just 3 hours before they're waking up. But if you went to sleep 4, 5, 6 hours before the world symphony makes the encore of a new day, sounds the note of the encore of a new day, then when you hear that kind of ta-dam, right, you wake up, and the world is very quiet, the air is very clean, and very sedate, and a person wakes up in a much more holistic, natural, and comfortable type of a way.
Those people that work, are on that schedule. Like my twin sister and I went to bed at like 8 or 9. We wake up at like 4 or 5.
Yeah, that's right.
Naturally.
Yeah. It's not so common, even though it's more common in the work world today. It's still not as common as it was in times of old, but you're right. Plenty of professional people have to get to downtown by 9, which means they have to deal with traffic on I-95, from 7, which means you've got to be up, yeah, and ready to hit the road at 6, which means you've got to be up by 5. Thank God we don't have to live that lifestyle. We could get up at 5 and be learning between 5 and 9 when they're having to deal with all of that rush hour garbage, yeah.
But it'd be learning in rush hour.
You could be, yeah. Yeah, have tapes and those, yeah, MP3s and all that stuff.
Skype, maybe.
Yeah, but you're still on the road and you're honking and you got pressure and you got to be moving the car. But that's hardly a relaxing lifestyle. But look, if you got to do it, you got to do it. And there's a way to bring Torah into everything. But the point here is just that he says that therefore an hour of sleep before midnight is worth 2 after midnight. And so even if 4 is not necessarily, so that would mean, according to that formula, 4 hours before midnight would equal 8 hours after. And if 4 is not enough, certainly 6 should be. What were we going to say, Mordechai?
Doctors say there's a certain type of sleep, there's different grades of sleep during the night. There's REM.
Yeah.
Does that work out with this Before midnight or after?
Yeah, I don't know if that really necessarily matters. I mean, the rapid eye movement. Yeah, that depends on like how much time you've been sleeping. But the point here is that you should be approaching the depth of sleep when the world is approaching like the depth of dormancy, and then ready to come out of that deep sleep as the world starts to awaken. But if you're going into that deep sleep as the world starts to awaken, you're clearly going to be right. That's counter. That's the word I'm looking. What's that? Counterproductive. Yeah, and therefore, the first point here then is that a person should go to sleep early enough so that he can get up by midnight. And there are people nowadays who do this, but of course it's much more difficult. He's going to outline the way it's ideally supposed to be according to the Torah teaching and of course according to the Torah way of life. If nowadays this can't be done in the ideal fashion, at least it can be done in a way which to the great extent possible. Maybe going to sleep at 10 and getting up at 6.
Is this applicable to non-Torah observant people?
It would be, I think, applicable to anyone, Jews or non-Jews. It's the way that God created the world, intended human beings to be kind of in tune with that harmony of the world, the rhythm. Thank you, the rhythm of the world. Yeah, but what let's say non-Jews or non-religious Jews would do at that time, I'm not sure, but they could also contemplate and meditate and so forth and so on. Let's see here the particular Jewish formula for what to do at that time. Kam b'chatzos.
Some people function better in the night.
Yeah.
I mean,
This doesn't mean to say that
world.
this doesn't mean to say that a person will not be functioning during the day either. The point is just that his day should start at like towards dawn. The point is that his day should start even before dawn, when the world is moving towards waking up, and by dawn a certain person should certainly be up. We don't do that. Most people don't do that. But if you want to connect to the rhythm of the world, that's what one should do. Yitol Yodov. Now, when he wakes up, what does he do? He washes his hands. Yitol Yodov mihaklipa hasholetes olem. He washes his hands of this impure force which has sway over them. V'ya'avir ro'a mibsoroi. And in this way cause evil to pass away from his flesh. V'yivorech, and make a bracha. V'yasaken hashchina be'esek Torah, and elevate, rectify the Shekhinah, the divine presence, through his being engaged in Torah study.
So wait, is it telling us that we should wash our hands before bed and then learn Torah again before bed?
Yes, you should wash your hands. I don't think he's talking here about washing the hands before going to bed, but if a person, for example, relieves himself, he's generally going to wash his hands before going to bed and make sure he says the Shema. And then when he wakes up, the first thing he does is he washes his hands. Why does he wash his hands? As we mentioned yesterday, because during sleep, the soul departs from the body. That results in a type of spiritual vacuum, which is a type of a death. And these negative spiritual forces, kind of like robbers or vagabonds, or like other types of animals that go, what are they called? Like, not scoundrels, but they go looking for remnants of things. Scavengers. That's the word. Scavengers. Yeah. When the owner of the home is away, or when the animal is away, so these other scavenger animals come and they try and feed off whatever's left behind. And so here too, these negative forces try and feed off whatever residual energy might be left in the body when the soul has departed. Kind of like the house owner, the housekeeper is gone. So these scavengers come and they try and ravage whatever they can sink their teeth into. And therefore, these spiritual forces, which are associated with the impurity of death, they come and they cleave to the body, as we mentioned yesterday, when a person's asleep. And when the soul returns, those forces are banished. They scatter. Because the owners come home. The soul is returned to its abode. And these scavengers, they flee. but they're still looking to get what they can. And they're holding on to the hands, like we mentioned, in order to pervade the person's activity with impurity and also be like spiritual leeches, which will try and garnish off or glean any of the positive energy that might be resulting from what a person's doing with the world, interacting in a positive way. So these forces seek to cleave to his hands, to cling to his hands, and he has to therefore wash his hands in order to pass this evil from upon him. I see there are two notes here. Passing the evil from his flesh, Nun Aleph, the note says, Hainu ruach ra v'tuma hashoira le'etzboisav lifnei shenot tel yodav b'boker. That's what we're referring to, right? The Bas Melech, the daughter of, the daughter of the queen, of the daughter of the king, meaning the black mistress, right? The daughter of the dark king. So she's remaining on the person's hands, and he has to get rid of her by washing her away. V'yivorech, and then he makes this bracha, nun beis, there's a note here on the bracha, Ratzalomer, what it means to say, birchas Torah. He's not referring to the bracha of Anatilis Yadayim according to this note. Rather, the brachas Torah. Within birchas Anatilis Yadayim, Ein Mate Ephraim. Shekosa behedia sheyesh levarech. Av lebir halacha, kosav sheyesh linhoig kadas chaya odam. L'maaseh rab she'in levarech rak li'achar shemenake atzmoi lifnei atfila. Okay, there's a note here which is saying that is referring to making brachas Torah. I don't know why he has to say that. He shouldn't be making any bracha if he has to relieve himself, and once he's relieved himself, he should be making the bracha on the Netilas Yadayim. But in any case, he makes a bracha, and the bracha that he makes, washing the hands, or the bracha over learning the Torah, causes this force of impurity to be vanished entirely. And then, when he's awake now, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, having washed and prepared himself for learning, and now he's sitting there learning Torah in the quietude and the solitary serenity of the night, the quality of that Torah is going to be very great. And that is actually going to be elevating the Shekhinah.
When do you dive in chakras then?
We haven't gotten to chakras yet.
Oh.
Yeah, we're learning in the middle of the night after having been asleep. So you go to sleep at 8, approximately. You get up at 12 when your alarm rings. And then you wash, prepare yourself for learning, and you learn from 2 in the morning, 3, 4, 5 in the morning until davening. And this does a great deal for rectifying the Shekhinah. Valzei ne'emar aleha, and regarding this it says, B'shachbecha tishmor alecha, in your lying down, it will guard you. I think is referring to the Torah. It'll guard you from the chitzonim, meaning learning Torah before going to sleep. In this case, saying the Shema, which we spoke about, is actually part of the Torah and also protective. So that would be a fulfillment of this verse, which says, "B'shach b'cha tishma alecha." And you're lying down, she, the Torah, will guard you and protect you. That's the Shema and the related verses that you say before going to bed. V'hakitzoisa hi tasichecha. And when you rise, she, the Torah, will be your subject of conversation and speech, meaning you will be engaged in Torah study. And she, the Torah, will then become intertwined with him, connected to him. And he together with her. And the result of this, the image of his soul will rise into Gan Eden together with the Shekhinah that is present there together with the tzaddikim as well, referring to the righteous who have departed and are in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. V'tiferes yovoi sham gamhu, and Tiferes will also go there. Tiferes, the sphere of Tiferes, will go there. I suppose Tiferes becomes involved because he's been engaged in Torah. And now they're all having a great party together. He, the one who's learning Torah, together with the Shekhinah who he's elevating, together with the Tzaddikim whose souls are there in Gan Eden, together with the sphere of Tiferes, which itself is also Torah. All of these spiritual forces will come together in one beautiful harmonized confluence of divine energy there in Gan Eden. Shekulam machshivim lekolo, and they're all listening to his voice of Torah as he's learning there through the night. Hari mamish nosa imo mihamiso v'hashena el soda chaim elyonim, and in this way the Shekhinah has actually traveled together with him from the state of death. And remember, we talked about the Shekhinah being Malchus, which is in exile. According to this, what he's doing is he's actually redeeming the Shekhinah from exile, taking her out of her place of dislocation and bringing her back into her place, into Gan Eden, where she is delighted together with the Tzaddikim, and all of this is promoted through his learning of Torah. V'ashen el soda chaim elyonim, and what he's done therefore is transformed death and impurity into the secret of life, supernal and elevated life. V'nikshar besod Gan Eden, and he now becomes tied and enmeshed within the mystery of Gan Eden, V'hischil isnotzes alav or at Tiferes, and at that point the sparks and illuminations of the Tiferes, which is Torah, the light of Tiferes, they start to glow over this person, Gan Eden ala tzaddikim, and upon the righteous who are there, v'chen perish Parshas Truma, and that's what's explained in the Zohar and Parshas Truma. So wonderful, amazing, very, very stimulating and enlightening things happen when a person is living his daily schedule according to this pattern, starting by going to sleep at the early part of the night, having a pure and rejuvenating, physically and spiritually rejuvenating sleep throughout the first part of the night, where his soul is being protected through his proper recitation of the Kriyat Shema and its blessings along its trajectory into the spiritual realm. It's being protected from all of these negative forces so that it's properly and fully rejuvenated, so that when a person wakes up, he's able full-heartedly and with a complete and pure and holy soul to be engaged in Torah at that part of the night when the world is starting to stir. And so his soul is also stirring up with the stirring of the world, and everything is elevated to this very wonderful level. And his Torah learning at that point goes into the spiritual realm, appeases the Shekhinah, taking her from her state of dislocation back into this Spheros, which is a type of a Geula, and she there becomes pleased with the presence of the righteous souls that are there, and his Torah learning, connecting to his daily living this proper way, is a catalyst for all of these wonderful things to happen. And there's more. This is only the first part of his day.
Now, this connection, this energy, this life, this death to life, is that happening at the higher soul in heaven, or is that happening to the Malchus, to him, his physically here on earth?
I think it's happening primarily through the higher level of soul, but that's yes, Keser and Neshama. But it's translated down through Ruach and Nefesh into the body itself as well, so that ultimately, right, it involves all parts of the person. Because don't forget, his body is asleep while his soul is being rejuvenated, but that soul, that rejuvenated soul, returns back to the body, and when the person awakes, his body is also refreshed. And so then that kind of new beginning is something that's going to infuse all planes, the different levels of soul and the body as well. Okay, so that would be through the experience of learning to, and that's what the Gemara says, that David HaMelech would go to sleep, he would wake up before midnight because of this magical harp that was played. From that time on, he would be involved in learning Torah and in praise and prayer and meditations to God. It was at that time that he composed the Psalms, right, Tehillim, and he would be engaged in this type of study / praise / meditative connection to God throughout the end of the night, through the dawn and the approaching day, until sunrise would occur, at which time he would start his morning prayers. And that's where, as you said, where Shachris would fit in. But Shachris is going to be the topic for the next section, so let's wait and do that tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem.